I have become all things to all men, says St. Paul, using a short pithy sentence with 3 forms of the word all in it. Tis pasin que conapanta, inapantos tinas soso. First of all it's men, all, then it's things, all things, and then it's the adverb of all, in all ways, in any way, by any means at all. Some I may save. And so he's indicating that in a sense we must have in the Lord's work, in the interests of getting through to souls, chameleon properties. We change our skin according to the surroundings. The Jesuit missionaries knew it full well when they operated under cover. They were well camouflaged, but also they could often speak wherever they were to anyone well disguised, as though they were one of them. But something of that we need as well. In teacher training we were taught that we start with the experience of the child, that is to say, what is familiar to him. If we're handling children, we must know how to enter their world, for that is their point of reference. In Ireland, if we're handling travelling people, itinerants, we need to know their language, their culture, and how they operate therein. The last thing that we do is talk down to anybody or categorize them as though we were superior. It will lead to immediate mental rebuttal. But also on a wider level, we need to be aware that culture is the bridge. People are in their culture. So we respect that culture. It applies supremely to a missionary situation. Now, of course, we have missionary situations in reverse, where former countries of mission, for us, have now become countries that are evangelizing us, sending us priests generously and in a sacrificial way, because they're far away from their culture. They might find it hard to enter into ours, but they do try, and we must help them. It is complex. In Wales we have the specific problem of culture, which is very complex, because there's not a language involved. And it is important that the Church understand that. Otherwise one will have no effect. If one can't operate on the culture or penetrate it, one will be marginalized, and that actually is what often happens. But there is also another context, and that of the culture of the person before us concretely. The bridge is our humanity, and humanity engages with what is in common. Humus is the ground, the earth, and we all stand on common ground, our humanity. And we need to, in some way, find in that humility, which is that of the earth, the humus, that respect for what is out there before us, the mystery of another soul coming from his background. There will always be something in common, otherwise we're not human. And the first point of contact, therefore, is being able to dialogue with a person with some common thing. There are ways and means of doing that if one has a certain culture. If one hasn't, but one has a notion of false culture, one's own rich baggage, which is superior, then one is a devastating, as we would say, flop in evangelization. One is just an off-putting element, full of oneself. The first key is that of the heart, and the heart is won by what is familiar, the sense of humour, the capacity to talk about anything. Therefore, not to be so specialized as to not know something about something, being all things to all men, even the little ones, the children. What will switch them on? Let's use that. I remember as a guest master, I discovered very quickly that to get through to all the different guests from different countries and all ages, one had to have precisely that chameleon property of changing one's skin and colour according to the surroundings. I remember one time we had, as every year, a colony from a community of recuperation from drugs. And there were lovely lassies getting better, and most of them actually got out of it and didn't fall back. So, what does one do? One has to get through to them if one is guest master. There's a grace for that. One is doing on behalf of the community that contact with the outside world in the community and bringing them to God and bringing God to them. I remember one night, one evening I was with them and I thought, how shall I get through to this crowd? And something prompted me, try what is common. They also would have known and been fans of what was out there when we were young. And I found one girl who actually could sing very well, and so we sang a duet from the Beatles repertoire, and it opened their hearts immediately. And it led to actually hearing good confessions later on while they were there. But these things matter. The first bridge is our humanity. And if we're on some journey, coming across some unexpected element of humanity out of the blue, that person is not just coming out of the blue. That person is coming sent by divine providence. And we honour providence in that person and ask permission to enter that person, precisely through our humanity. For entered, if that person wants, we can exchange, and that person perhaps is suffering. Suffering is a great opener of the soul. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted. Pain is a great equalizer, and when people are down, they will actually accept the ministry of another word, another message, if the grace of God is expressed in human kindness. Joy is a great evangelizer. A sad saint is a sorry saint. I remember one day being in the monastery and finding that actually other souls were coming as well, not at all in search of God, but just in search of an experience of history, of architecture, of beauty, for the chant actually is beautiful. And we found there something which was extraordinarily interesting as a means of calming people down. Beauty speaks. Chant and incense also speaks without language. It's another language that God has given us. To create an atmosphere is actually something universal. And strangely enough, the scouts who came by the 100 also opened up to something beyond themselves. Even though such a small community, we had actually a huge impact because there was this element of being able to get through to the youth. But what works? Not the shoddy. There is an authenticity in youth which we need actually to listen to. They don't secretly necessarily want just more of the same thing. They know it already. They don't necessarily have to have a jazzy celebration. They know it already. They haven't come from another disco to another disco. They want not a disco in church. They want, perhaps in their own way, a touch of the mystical, the beyond, not the human. And there, the Lord has given us a great means of opening the heart, where the human produces an atmosphere and hands it over to the Lord. That we can do. The secret of knowing how to create an atmosphere, the greatest evangelizer is good liturgy, for there God gets centre stage and can perform far better than we can.